The tension was palpable as the clock ticked down in Munich. Slovenia, buoyed by their first-ever lead at a major tournament, stood firm against a Serbian onslaught. But in the end, it was not to be. With just seconds remaining, Luka Jovic rose highest to nod home a corner, sending the Serbian bench into delirium and leaving the Slovenian players and fans in stunned silence. The atmosphere in the stadium had been electric from the opening whistle. Slovenia, displaying their trademark disciplined defense and swift counterattacks, looked dangerous on the break, with Timi Elznik and Zan Karnicnik causing all sorts of problems for the Serbian backline. It was the latter who would prove to be the architect of his team's opener, setting up Elznik for a powerful strike that rattled the crossbar. Serbia, however, were not to be outdone. They weathered the storm and slowly began to assert their authority on the game. Aleksandar Mitrovic, the towering striker who had been a thorn in Slovenia's side all match, came close with a header that cannoned off the post, before seeing another effort saved by the Slovenian goalkeeper. It seemed as though Serbia would be left ruining those missed opportunities, as the second half progressed without another clear-cut chance for either side. But then, with just a few minutes of stoppage time remaining, the ball fell to Jovic at the far post. The striker, who had been largely quiet all match, timed his run to perfection and nodded home a looping header that left the Slovenian goalkeeper helpless. Pandemonium ensued on the Serbian bench as their players sprinted towards Jovic in celebration. The players collapsed to the ground, exhausted from their efforts, while the fans erupted in cheers, waving their flags and banners in the air. Slovenia, meanwhile, were left to rue their inability to hold on to their lead. They had looked comfortable for much of the match, but the equalizer had sapped their energy and left them vulnerable on the counterattack. As the final whistle blew, they slumped to the ground, heads in hands, knowing that they had let a historic opportunity slip through their fingers. A pinpoint corner from Dusan Tadic found the head of Luka Jovic, who rose majestically above the Slovenian defense to power a thunderous header past the helpless goalkeeper and into the back of the net. The roar that echoed around the Munich football arena was deafening, as the Serbian players collapsed to the turf in jubilation. The Serbian bench erupted in celebration, leaping from their seats and sprinting onto the pitch to mob their talismanic striker. Even the usually stoic manager, Dragan Stojkovic, couldn't contain his emotions, rushing to embrace Jovic with a bear hug. In the opposing dugout, Slovenia's coach, Matjaž Kek, slumped to the ground, his head in his hands. His players stood stunned, unable to believe what had just transpired. It had been a heartbreaking end to what had been a gritty, determined performance from the Slovenians. They had defended stoutly, frustrating the Serbian attack with their organization and determination. But in the end, it wasn't enough. The final whistle blew, and as the Serbian players sank to their knees in thanksgiving, the realization of what they had just achieved began to sink in. They had salvaged a precious point, keeping alive their slim hopes of progression to the knockout stages. For Slovenia, the dream was over. They had come so close, but in the end, they were left to rue the missed opportunities and the crucial mistakes that had cost them dearly. The players from both sides embraced each other at the final whistle, acknowledging the effort and commitment that had been on display. But as they walked off the pitch, there was no denying the sense of loss that hung heavy in the air. For one team, it was a crushing blow. For the other, a lifeline. Such is the cruel nature of football, and the European Championship in particular. But for this moment, at least, Serbia could savor the sweet taste of redemption. The draw meant that both teams remained in contention for a spot in the knockout stages, setting up a tantalizing final group game between Serbia and Denmark. For Slovenia, it would be a case of trying to recapture the form that had seen them win their first two games at the Euros, while Serbia would be looking to build on their late comeback and secure their place in the next round. One thing was for certain, with two evenly matched teams set to face off, fans were in for a treat as the tournament reached its climax.